Football season is coming up, and the last thing you want to serve on game day are pizza pockets and little cheese cubes on a toothpick. Stay tuned, and I'm going to share with you my most popular game day snack, bacon-wrapped jalapeno poppers stuffed with cheese and chorizo. And I'm going to be making up some of my Sriracha Ranch. And we're going to be grilling those jalapeno poppers on my Weber kettle. Welcome back to Grillin' and Chillin' with Coleman, and unless the real Coleman has become a vegan, I'm Coleman. Today we're going to be grilling one of the most amazing snacks you could serve at your next get-together, bacon-wrapped jalapeno poppers, or as we call them here in the GNC kitchen, Texas Twinkies. But as a warning, you're going to want to make a bunch of them because they're going to disappear quick. At one of my recent parties, I made over 100 of them, and they were gone. Let's get started on prepping those jalapenos. The great thing about Texas Twinkies is you can actually prep them the day before and just keep them in the refrigerator till you're ready to grill them. Now, I personally like using both the green and the red jalapenos, but we're not going to be using the red today because I have a plan for these later. But here's a tip. You can also use a variety of sweet peppers if you don't want the heat. The first thing I do with these peppers is I rinse them off in cool water and dry them off. Now that the peppers are clean and dry, let's go ahead and make room for the stuffing. I like to cut mine a little different than most people. Now, I've seen some people cut the entire top off or cut the pepper in half. Well, the problem with that is it lets the filling leak out all over the grill. I like to leave the stem on mine, and I give it what's called a T-cut. I start off by cutting through the top, just under the cap, about halfway through. Then I slice down the front of the pepper almost all the way to the tip. It creates two doors that can be folded out to access the inside. I've heard a lot of people say that the heat of a pepper is in the seeds, but in reality it's actually in the white membrane on the inside. The capsaicin oil is in the membrane, and that's what makes the peppers hot. So if you want to make your poppers less hot, remove more of that white membrane on the inside. I found that the best way to do this is with the handle of a spoon. I start off by inserting the handle just below the cap and sliding it down the inside of the pepper. This will get most of the membrane out along with most of the seeds. All right, let me get the rest of these done, then we're going to get our grill ready. We want to grill these Texas Twinkies low and slow at about 250 degrees and add a little smoke. Now, I do this by using my Vortex. I place it in the bottom of the grill right in the middle with the small end up, and then I fill it with lumped charcoal. I've found that the best way to start my charcoal is with a propane torch. I never use lighter fluid. Once the charcoal is lit, the rack goes back on the grill right over the Vortex. We will also need to put on a skillet to heat up. Now that my skillet is hot, let's go ahead and cook up my secret ingredient for this filling, and that's chorizo. I found that adding about 6 ounces of chorizo to your mix really adds a nice touch. You want to make sure the chorizo is completely cooked, then remove it from the heat to let it cool before we mix it with the rest of the ingredients. Now let's add a little mesquite wood for smoke, but hickory will also work. I like to put the wood on top of the grate. It seems to last a little longer. Now the lid goes back on, and I need to adjust the vents on the top and bottom of the grill to get the temperature to 250 degrees. While we wait for our smoke to turn from blue to gray, let's go ahead and make up some of that filling. In my opinion, the filling needs to have a great balance between cheesy and savory. So this is what I put in mine. 1 cup of cream cheese. Now, here's a little tip. I left this out of the refrigerator for a few hours to soften up. 1 cup of grated sharp cheddar cheese, 2 cloves of garlic, 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika, a half a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, 1 teaspoon of avocado oil, and 1 tablespoon of meat churt fajita seasoning. Now, this stuff contains salt, pepper, onion powder, and a little bit of lime. And finally, we're going to add in the chorizo that we cooked earlier. It's been cooling for about 20 minutes. We're going to mix it all in the bowl until it's smooth. Now let's get some of this cheesy goodness inside of our peppers. The best way that I found to do it is with a piping bag. You fill the bag up and squeeze it in. If you don't have one, I put a link to one in the description below. But you can just use a Ziploc bag, fill the bag up, clip off one of the corners and squeeze it in. You want to fill the jalapenos as full as you can without overflowing. Now here's another secret to taking those Texas Twinkies over the top. I put a small piece of smoked pulled pork inside. Yes, pulled pork. Now I usually smoke about 40 pounds of pulled pork at a time. I put them in a vacuum seal bag and then stick them into the freezer. That way they're ready anytime I need them. Now you can also use a piece of leftover brisket or chicken, but I prefer the pulled pork in my poppers. Now for the last step before they go on the grill. I wrap the entire jalapeno in thin sliced bacon. Now make sure you use a thin sliced bacon. The thick cut, it won't wrap well and it also won't get crispy on the grill. My favorite is the maple flavored bacon. It adds an entire new level of flavor to the popper. I start at the top, place the bacon at a slight angle, and then wrap it to the end. If you use thin sliced bacon, you also don't need to use a toothpick to hold it together. It will hold together nicely on its own, but if you want to use one, go ahead. Then I sprinkle a little more of the Meat Church fajita seasoning right on top. Now let's get these things on the grill. Our Weber kettle has stabilized at 250 degrees, but before we put these poppers on the grill, I like to spray the grates with a little avocado oil. This will keep the peppers from sticking when I pull them off later. We're going to be smoking these poppers at 250 degrees for about an hour to an hour and a half, but it all depends on the size of your peppers and the thickness of your bacon. Make sure you place the peppers over indirect heat. On the Weber, that means around the edges or away from the coals. You don't want them directly over the flames, as the filling could drip out and cause flare-ups. I also like to put them with the stem toward the heat, as that is the thickest part of the pepper and can take the most heat. Now that we got them on the grill and the lid is back on, let's go ahead and make some dipping sauce. We're going to make up some of my Sriracha Ranch to dip these Texas Twinkies into. This dip is something you can actually make the night before and then put in the refrigerator. Ranch is the most popular dressing and dip in the United States, but we're going to kick it up a little bit by adding some Sriracha to the mix. This is what we're going to use. 1 cup of mayonnaise, 1/4 cup of buttermilk, 1/2 cup of sour cream, 1/2 teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce, 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1/4 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 tablespoon of Sriracha sauce, 1/2 teaspoon of lime juice, 1 teaspoon of honey, 1/4 teaspoon of salt and 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, 1/2 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, and then I have 3 tablespoons of fresh parsley and 1/2 tablespoons of fresh dill. Now if you're using powdered parsley, just use 1 tablespoon, and if you're using powdered dill or dried dill, just use 1/2 teaspoon of that. I'm going to start off by mixing the mayonnaise, the buttermilk, and the sour cream in a bowl until it's smooth. Then I'll add the rest of the ingredients, and then I'm going to top it off with a few chives. Now let's put this back in the refrigerator to chill and check on those poppers. All right, these have been on the heat for about 45 minutes, so let's go ahead and take a look at them. Oh man, look at that color. Now it doesn't look like the bacon is quite done yet. It needs to crisp up a little bit more. So we're gonna leave it on to soak up some of that charcoal love for about 30 more minutes. While we're waiting, it's time for Coleman's useless trivia facts. As I mentioned before, I like to use both red and green jalapenos, and surprisingly, they're actually the same pepper. Green jalapenos, when you leave them on the plant, will actually turn red. I personally think the red ones are a little sweeter and they have a little less heat. Also, chipotle powder is actually made from jalapenos that have been smoked, dehydrated, and then ground up. I make my own here in the GNC kitchen from jalapenos I grow in the garden. And that Sriracha sauce that we used earlier actually uses chipotle powder to get its color and its flavor. Now you can impress your friends with some useless facts. You're welcome. All right, so these Texas Twinkies have now been on the grill for about an hour and 20 minutes. So let's go ahead and check on them. Man, it looks like the bacon is crisped up real nice and those jalapenos are nice and done. Let's go ahead and pull them off and we're gonna plate them up with some of that Sriracha Ranch we made. Now be real careful with these because they are nice and hot and they can tend to be a little drippy. Let's plate them up with a little of our Sriracha Ranch that we made on the side. Man, those are perfect, nice and tender. That bacon turned out perfect. Nice. Now that's a great looking Texas Twinkie. The bacon has become nice and crispy and the cheese is all melted together. Now I like to let them cool for about 5 minutes before I serve them, but man, do those babies look good. While they cool off, let's review what we did. First, we rinsed and dried our jalapenos. Then we cut our peppers and removed the guts. Next, we got our grill ready with the vortex and cooked up our chorizo in the skillet. Then we made up our stuffing and filled the peppers and added our pulled pork and wrapped the whole thing in bacon. It was then time to get these Texas Twinkies on the heat to grill and soak up some of that smoke. While they were smoking, we made some of our amazing Sriracha Ranch. After a little over an hour, it was time to get them off the grill and cool for just a few minutes. Can we go ahead and eat these things now? You notice the way that we cut these peppers, all that cheesy goodness stayed right inside where it's supposed to be. We didn't cut the end off, didn't cut it in half. Everything stayed inside where it was supposed to be. Now this thing got a double dose of smoke with the mesquite wood that we put on the grill, as well as that smoked pulled pork that we put inside. Let's go ahead and take a bite. Oh, wow. See the inside, nice and cheesy. Got that pulled pork in there. And that maple bacon just added a whole new flavor to this. Now, this is pure Texas love right there. I think I'm going to go back for seconds. Wow. You want to impress your friends on game day? You make up some of these Texas Twinkies with the chorizo and the pulled pork, and I guarantee you they're going to come back for more. I always enjoy my time with you out here in the GNC kitchen. Now, if you enjoyed this video, here's a few more from my channel that you might like. And see this button right here? Hit that button if you'd like to subscribe to Grillin' and Chillin' with Coleman. Now, I've got some Texas Twinkies to go eat, so y'all go grill something.